In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how you can turn your riffs, your scratch riffs, or things that you create and turn them into songs. And I'm going to demonstrate the process that I used for this track that I'm going to show you here in a minute. So I'm going to take a look at the rough track that I started with and what I turned it into. So this is the rough track I started out with. This is a writing session I have here. So one thing I recommend is having a writing session. So for low latency to track your rough ideas, to kind of get them out like scratch tracks, and then have another session for your mix. So here I've got my tracking session, and then over here I have a full sort of template session, not fully mixed or anything, just something to kind of get the sound going, and you can develop the song further when you kind of copy those riffs over and see how they translate. So first up, here's the riff. So what you can hear there, it's pretty rough. It's just to get the idea out there. Now let's take a quick listen to what I've turned it into and what it sounds like from this process, which I'll go over here in just a moment. So this is the session here. Now I've got a few outlines because I have developed this riff further from this starting point. This is the first point where I started with just this riff idea. And then I've created an intro verse, a break, a verse 2, chorus, breakdown 1, chorus 2, extended chorus, and it's still developing. So that riff here is actually verse 2, and it sounds like this. So that's what the riff turned into, and then I developed all these other ideas around that one riff here. So all these different verses, breaks, which I'll share later in the video as well. But first we'll go back to the starting point here. So what I'll do is I'd have my tracking session, what I've done here, and you can see here I've got 2 guitar parts here. They're the exact same guitar parts. So the general idea is with this rough track here, which I'm going to play here in a second, this was the original take. And you can see here, I cut it up and put it to the grid, and then I consolidated it to this one here. So then it sort of fits in with timing and everything like that. But basically you don't want to care about too much. You just want to keep that creativity going. So even if it's out of time, it's a little bit off, it's just a scratch track. You just want to look at this as basically if you're doing a drawing, you're doing a sketch. And when someone does a painting or a drawing, they sketch it a few times, they retrace it once again, they trace over it again, they color it, and they keep developing it further. It's the same process with this. So basically this was our original scratch track, which sounds like this. You can see the timing sounds off. It doesn't sound correct because I was just trying to flush out an idea that I had in my head, and I couldn't quite figure out what that idea was, but I just had to kind of throw it out there, record it. And then what I did was I went into the track and I started editing it to the grid here. You can see I just cut up the different riffs and sort of retracked a few of them and just split them up. So basically, and putting them into time here. So basically whatever DAW you have, you could just, cut them, drag them out, expand them, whatever you need to do to kind of get that rhythm going. And once you kind of do that, then I moved on to the next step of developing that riff. I've been doing this process a lot lately. So the next step here is I just have a bass MIDI. Now this doesn't have to be a bass library. You could use a sub bass, anything just that has like MIDI and bass. You could use, a synth, free synth, anything. I'm using this one here by Submission Audio. And basically what I have here is this bass track here. And what I'm doing is if I press E in Reaper here, you can see what I'll do is I'll add these notes just to follow along with the guitar and get that rough idea. And that's the first step, which is going to help me develop the drums second here. So if I just solo the bass here. So what you'd want to do is you'd have your guitar track here. So what you want to do is you want to find the note that you're playing on. So how you do that is obviously you draw your MIDI in that you'd want to add where you want to go here. So just match it to the length of the guitar track. And then you got to find the note of the MIDI here. So what you do is you'd open it up, you'd find your note here, and you could just place your first note. And then what I like to do after I find that pitch, you can just see it here within this view within Reaper. If you don't have this view in your DAW or Reaper, you can just open up the piano roll on a second screen and just try and eyeball and stretch them out and just, match what those notes are. Once you go through that and you've got all your notes in, then basically you can open up your bass here and you can just copy all of these notes from your bass. Then you can go to your drum MIDI of choice. You can use anyone that you like. I'm just using Drum Forge here just because it was easy to load up. And then basically, once you've copied your bass, if I just paste it in here, you can see all these notes here are relating to what I've added as the bass kick here. I've just kind of made them smaller. But if I mute them, you can hear the drums are synced up with the bass, and you've got your kick drum in sync with your guitars and your bass already. So you've got a good starting point. Then you just need to add a snare drum. I don't worry about the cymbals or anything just yet in this part. So I'll just add the backbeat. So I just add the snare in if I want it on the 2 and the 4, or if I just want it on the 3. In this case, I put it on the 3rd. So on the 3rd beat for each one. Now you can develop this further. You can add lead parts, anything like that. But that's the bare bones starting point that I like to use right now. It's been a really good method for me for writing. Now, next tip is going to be doing the same method, but using a click track. And you can make your own custom click track. Now, you may notice in your DAW, you might only have the quarter notes, and it sets to every quarter note of the beat. But you can make your own custom click tracks within your DAW. It's really simple to do. So what you could do is you could add any sort of synth. And basically what I did was here, I think I just added this resynth and basically just pulled everything here, the attack and the sustain, the release and everything down to 0 and kept the decay to 4. So it just makes like a little bleep sound, which sounds like this. And as you can see, I got the main metronome still up there. But the reason why this is helpful is because you can add any sort of notes that you like. So subdivisions that you need if you want to track, if you're having trouble getting sort of like a rhythm down. So for this one here, I've got it in 16th notes. See down the bottom here, I've got it at 16. So you could break these rhythms up to 8th notes, or if you wanted to have any sort of like triplets or dotted or swing sort of rhythms that you might not be able to do within the normal metronome, you can just make your own sort of one to help you get that sort of idea out if you need to click to get that pulse. So I make a few of these and I like to use them. So this one, I had the 16th note one, and that was for a part here, I believe, for the lead. So that part was written for verse 1, which sounds like this. So once I've written that down, I just copy that into my main session, and then I can get that sort of mix, general idea, and you can develop it further. The next tip I have for you as well that's really helpful to use is also for certain parts, maybe they're a bit more technical. At the start of the video, I mentioned that you just want to get the ideas out, and it doesn't really matter if you can play it well or whatever. It doesn't really matter because you're going to learn the song anyway. How I like to approach it is I'll track it, make sure it's playable and it translates, and you'll be able to play it. But if it's a bit technical to do and you can't do it straight away, there's no shame in doing it, editing it or slowing down the track half speed or even slower and tracking it and combining some of those other techniques that we said, like using the click. So for example, let's take a look at the chorus here. So I'm using the click track in the recording session here, and I want to write this lead melody, and I want to make sure it's always on the pulse of the click. So our chorus with the lead melody and everything is going to sound like this with the click track that we have. So that's what it sounds like in the tracking session that I did using all these same techniques that I've been showing throughout the video. So this one here, I've got everything except for the drums. So our click track here that we're going to be tracking to make it easier to get our timing, I've set it to 8th notes straight there. So that's what we can use for that clicking beep sound for our click track. Let's say that we want to slow it down so we can get those 8th notes for the lead melody. Just make sure that we're hitting those notes at that 8th note speed. Maybe you're tremolo picking or doing a pretty technical part, and just slow it down and track it, and then we can always learn it later and retrack it. So this is a lead melody that will slow down here. So to track it in half speed or slow it down even further, just go to your BPM here and change it to whatever speed you want to. So it's at 120 BPM, so we're going to halve it, just go 60. So obviously you're going to stretch it out on your session here because it's stretching all the audio and the Midi and everything like that. Now let's take a listen. Now you can see it makes it a little bit easier if you need to do some technical solos or parts or anything like that, just to get the idea out. And then you can go back once it's tracked and then bring it back up to full speed and then bring that in to your writing session so you can continue on developing these parts when your creativity is in that flow, because you don't want to interrupt this flow. You want to keep that creative process going as fast as possible and staying in that creative flow. So I'll use techniques like that all the time, and then I'll go back, track it at full speed, I'll learn the song, make sure I can play it, and then go to the final tracking. But this is all just getting the ideas out there. Now for that chorus there, I didn't actually have any drums, you may have noticed. So what I did there is I used a sample pack of some drums that I really liked. And this is for the chorus here. So this is what the drum MIDI sounds like. So if I play the chorus in the mix now, let's take a listen. So that's the chorus part there, just from doing that same technique there. And obviously I've got vocals and stuff where I'm using the same techniques where I do a scratch track and then add them in later and retrack them once I've got the final idea. But you sort of get the idea. That's the quick tips that I like to use for tracking and writing a song here. I've done this for all of these sections and these breaks and everything, and I've kind of just developed them from there. And for the final tip here is using Guitar Pro. So what I did was, after I developed these ideas, I exported the MIDI from the DAW and I imported them. So I started off with the bass because it just had all those sort of, open notes, made it easy to kind of get the guitar part. So I started with the bass and I imported the MIDI. So you can see the bass MIDI here, it's got that piano. That's because I imported the MIDI. So you could just do a piano, whatever, just to get the notes. It doesn't really matter even if you've just got a basic synth and it's just playing the notes. You just want those basic notes there to give you a starting point. And you see here, I've developed it. So I've got the rhythms down here in Guitar Pro. So I added the guitar parts and, I tried out different things. And this helped develop the song as well, like transposing it into here, because I added some clean parts that I played on guitar. So that's the one I tracked there, the lead chorus part. But then I added extra parts of the song as well, where, this was one part I tracked on the guitar and I worked out the rhythms and, same here. Some of the ambient parts I roughly tracked, but then I went in here into Guitar Pro, and because I was playing in the minor key, I was using, the minor scale here to help me figure out what notes might work on a visual aspect. So if you're struggling to know what notes to use in the key, you can just use this. You can see I'm playing the B here, going to C, and then for the next ambient part, it's going up to the 12th, which is the E. Using that was very helpful, and that sounds like this, just playing that ambient part. And that helps re-refine this song even further and come up with even more ideas that I might not have had in the initial tracking session. So it's a really great practice and it helps you really understand the rhythms and how to sort of develop the song a lot more. And you can remember it too, so you don't forget it. So if you're using both of these tools together, like Guitar Pro and your DAW, and you're struggling with the rhythms, like trying to input them into Guitar Pro, one quick tip I like to use is you can see the notation here. So if I change it to the full notation so you can see all the notes here, you can see all the rhythms and, you can see all the different types there. If you're struggling with that, so what you can do is you can go into your DAW there and obviously make it in the DAW, then import it into Guitar Pro. So you can see here, I've got my bass MIDI. So it's all MIDI. So if you're using any MIDI instruments, it's going to work with this a lot easier. So with my bass MIDI there, what I can do is I can actually open it up here. And you can see you've got your MIDI there. It's sometimes a lot easier to just set this down here where you go to whatever subdivision you want. So, you want like a 16th note, an 8th note, or a quarter note. What you can do in Reaper, at least, I'm not sure about other DAWs, but you can go up to the music notation and you can actually see the music notation. And you can actually see here, if I go to the chorus part here, you can see the music notation. I can actually click on the MIDI notes and actually change them, and you can see the rhythms. Thanks for watching. I'm going to leave you with the final song playthrough here so you can see what it sounds like and what it turned into. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.